here's what becomes one of the most significant superpowers in my mind. A guy named John Bowlby, who's also dead, came up with this theory of attachment in the 40s, and he said, at the same time we were talking about dogs and rats, was like, guys, the most important thing we have to teach our kids is something called emotional regulation. And people were like, no, that's a lot of words. And he's like, no, really. If kids learn how to stay calm in times of distress, then they can learn. Yeah? That's a really good idea. He said, there's two things that you need on board to be able to teach a kid emotional regulation. That is a secure base and a safe haven. People are like, oh my Lord, that is very theoretical. Let's go with the shocking. Yeah? He's like, no, really. The unfortunate part about attachment theory is that people, he said, John wrote even before he died that he wishes he wouldn't have called it attachment theory because people assume that it's all about connection. That if you just breastfeed till they're 65, co-sleep, have a dolphin-assisted pool birth, things will be fine. Yeah? Coach everything, bake gluten-free everything. You can do all of those things or none of those things and have a beautiful relationship with your child. Because it is not about the method, it's about the crazy. Yeah? And if you have the crazy on board, you can do anything or none of those things, and your babies are going to be okay. Yeah? I want to show you just a quick little video about that I think is really cool, because so many times parents say to me, I don't know what else to do. I don't know what else to do. Huh? Here's the thing, less is more. What they want is you. 98% of these kids entered the same way.
If you could have dinner with anyone, living or dead, who would you choose?
Kylie Minogue.
Oh. Marilyn Monroe.
Oh, God, I wouldn't have a clue.
I know, straight up. Paul Hogan.
Kim Kardashian.
No.
I'd like to have dinner with Justin Bieber.
What? He'd not come to my house.
I'd have Bob Hawke.
Dave Hughes.
Barry Humphries.
Jimi Hendrix.
People who have made a difference in the world, maybe Nelson Mandela at the dinner table.
I don't know what he's going to say, I'm scared.
If you could have dinner with anyone in the world, who would you choose?
Probably our whole family, like a whole extended family.
Mum and Dad. Mum and Dad.
Does it have to be a celebrity? Could it be family?
We love it. We talk about how school is. We ask Mum and Dad how their day was.
Family.
Yeah, Mum and Dad.
Family. Who would you like to have dinner with?
They just want to be with us while they're eating food, which is pretty cool.
They see us above everything. I'm going to get...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bit of a message in it for me.
Yes.
What are we having for dinner?
Food becomes a really important thing that we're going to talk about in a little while. We've spent a lot of time in this process of behaviorism as using food as a reward. Yeah? Food we use as a reward. So you pee on the potty, you get a Smartie. Yeah? You clean your bedroom, you get to choose from the treat bin. Yeah? When we use food as a reward, we're assuming regulation. Yeah? Food is often one of your best strategies to get a kid regulated. Because you can't chew when you're dysregulated. It's impossible, you'll choke, see? So there's something very different about that, so we'll talk about that in a second, but this is John Bowlby's stuff, and he says an attachment figure is actually somebody who can do two things. It can be a guy who collects you, but he's also a guy that can set limits and boundaries and be your biggest fan. And both of those things need to be on board for you to teach a kid emotional regulation. It isn't just all about the breastfeeding till you're 65. So when we look at his work, what became really clear to us at the Children's Hospital, so we're a bunch of psychiatrist trying to teach medical doctors how to make sense of attachment, yeah? And when we want to talk about medication all the time, there's a place for medication. Obviously, we're on a psychiatric inpatient unit. But this guy named Dan Siegel helped us understand this stuff more than anything. So there's two things that changed my life when I was understanding this idea of emotional regulation. This is one of them. This is the brain. Is anybody like a doctor or a nurse? Do you know anything about the brain? Okay, good. Don't say it if you do, because I'm going to just make this up. So this is your brain. So this is Dan Siegel's work. He's written the whole brain child, and he has this theory called the lid flipping theory, that if you don't need to read the book, but you can look at his YouTube stuff. He's phenomenal, Harvard trained, and has done lots of beautiful stuff. So I want you to make a fist, and I'll explain to you how this works with the brain. If you make a fist, I'm watching you. Yeah? Okay. Put your thumb on the inside. There you are. Not like you're going to get in a fight, Calgary. Come on. I got time. There you go. He's like this. He's like one of those kids in the back. I got my fist. I'm not putting it up. Okay. This is your brain. It fits in your head just like this. So this arm here is your spinal cord. This is your brain stem. This is your limbic system. So if you put your fingers up like this, your thumb becomes your limbic system. I say to my husband, the cow guy, even cows have a limbic system. Even cows have this part of your wrist right here. That's the fundamental sort of primitive part of your brain that handles breathing. Everything sort of phenomenal right down here in this bottom part, okay? Fits in your head like that. The limbic system is like God's gift to the regulating strategies for everybody. Everybody gets 3 basic regulating strategies when they're born: fight, flight, and freeze. Even cows get them. Yeah? Fight, flight, and freeze, which is how we deal with any big emotion when you bring your baby home from the hospital. How we assist our kids in learning other ways of regulating emotion and being in this world happens in the prefrontal cortex, which wraps around the limbic system. Okay? That's representing your fingers. It's this place above your forehead right here, your prefrontal cortex. That is where all the good stuff lives. Everything you've ever learned in your life lives in the prefrontal cortex, like how to tie your shoes, how to judge a heifer calf, how to drive a car, how to speak a language, yeah? How to apologize, how to have empathy. See, we're wired for connection, but somebody has to be empathic towards us for us to be able to give that away, okay? All of that lives in your prefrontal cortex. Yeah, the PIN number to your bank card, who's on your family tree, everything is up there. When your lid is on, you have access to all that. When you chose to marry your wife or your husband, their lid was on. Have you ever seen them flip their lid? You understand that term, Calgary? She flipped her lid, yeah? Which means she lost her friggin' mind, okay? Now, that happens in times of distress for our babies. When we bring them home from the hospital, how do they let us know what they need in times of distress? They cry, they flip their lid, they lose their friggin' mind until we figure out what the deal is and we put their lid back on. And we do that again and again and again and again, sometimes 30 times in 5 minutes. And in that process, it becomes really important because what we are doing is creating neural pathways in that prefrontal cortex on how to regulate emotion. The more time I do that in the presence of my babies, the less they will require somebody to do that in my absence. The more I do that for my babies in my presence, the less they will require somebody to regulate them in my absence. So when they flip their lid and they don't have language, we get this really well, right? We're like, we don't say like after we change their bum and feed them, we're like, okay, listen, I have tried everything. When you're ready to make a good choice, just raise a finger, okay? But when they get language, those are the kind of directions we get when their lids are flipped, yeah? The only way they let us know when they're in distress is they flip their lid and they go into fight, flight, or freeze, yeah? So again and again and again, as you regulate your babe, you are creating neural pathways that assist them in regulating themselves when you're not there, in self-soothing, yeah? And the issue is, for many kids, depending on temperament or whether they have had a neurological condition, some kids require lid putting back on more than others, yeah? Even in, your own range of children, you're like, this guy's a lid flipper. He's a nightmare. I own a daughter like that. I really wanted a daughter, and now, like, both the boys put together, like, friggin' hell. Anyway, hell's probably really bad. Okay. Just kidding. Okay, so when you flip your lid again and again and again and again, my job as your parent is to put that back on again and again and again and again and again. Because when I create neural pathways of regulation and soothing, and I say things like, okay, baby, again, okay, I know you want a ring pop for breakfast. Look at me. I know. It's tough to be 3. Yeah, I know. And when I do that again and again and again, you then have access to give that away, okay? If, for example, the response is, more often than not, things that sound like, shut up, enough, get to your room, boys don't cry, stupid. That is what they have access to give away in times of distress as they grow. That's what they will have to give to their babies. So many times our parents are doing the best they can with what they got. Because if nobody has given you anything else, you have no other resources in your back pocket. Does that make sense? Because in times of distress, if you've went over a pathway again and again and again, which pathway are you going to take when a storm's coming? The path of least resistance, yeah? And so when I create neural pathways that look like, most of the time, soothing, I give you this sense of how to regulate your emotion again and again and again, you then have access to that when I'm not there, yeah? And you're all looking panicked. Don't worry, you don't have to do this like consistently ever. You only got to get it right 30% of the time, okay? You screw this shit up 70%, it's still okay. He was going to leave if things were going well, and he's still here. So this is a problem. The deal is, though, when I put that lid on again and again and again, you have access to this. Have you ever been out and somebody says to you, your daughter is so lovely. She must just be the easiest kid to raise. And you're like, are you sure you know her name's Olivia? No, Grant? Like, we don't have the same last name. Maybe you're confused. Or when they say, your son is like, what a good kid. Parents often say this to me, why are they so nice to everybody else? They're just so awful to me. Like, do they hate me? This is exactly what I want you to hear. That tells me you're doing your job. Because their job is to get dysregulated with the people they're most comfortable with. And if they're doing that with you, you are right on the money. And your job, as much as you are physically, humanly capable of, is to help them regulate again and again and again. There'll be days where you got this. Days you're good, you've had a little Baileys in your coffee, and you're feeling relaxed and stress-free. You're like, yes, baby, I know, that's very hard. And other days you'd be like, brush your teeth! Totally normal. When we see, because the thing is, have you ever? This is my husband's favorite line too. The kids were fine till you got home. Here's what I say to that: maybe if you were nicer, they'd be more dysregulated around you. Yeah, they're giving me their best stuff. I'm teaching them the most. Maybe you should step up your game a little. Because I want them to be, when I'm away from my kids, so I was just telling your trustees here last week, I had this crazy Alberta road trip from, I was in Grand Prairie to school, and I went to Drayton Valley, and then I was in Lethbridge, and my assistant Marty was like, God, I didn't realize Grand Prairie and Lethbridge are so far apart. Sweet mother, okay? So being away from my kids for 3 days, I understood completely. I got to stop one night for supper with them and have some cuddles and then keep going on my Asher 7 and the twins are 5. And I knew it was going to be a shit show for 3 hours. Like, I understood when I came through the door, they would lose their mind because they needed to. Yeah? They needed to dysregulate because, again, when I dropped the bomb that I was going to leave in 2 hours, that was also going to be another lose your mind moment. I knew it. Huh? Olivia, like, I wasn't quite prepared for this. We were at the table, and I said, okay, guys, thanks for, this was a fun supper. No, it wasn't. It's dumb. I know. You don't like spaghetti and meatballs yet. You never cook anything else. Okay. And then I said, okay, listen, mommy's going to go now. Daddy's going to bring you to Lethbridge tomorrow, and we're going to have, we'll get to have a sleepover tomorrow. Does that sound good? What? You're leaving again? And Olivia says, I cannot live like this any longer. She's 5. So I say, Daddy, Olivia cannot live like this any longer. I don't know. He's like, okay, what's the problem, babe? I can't spend another night alone with just Dad. I know, baby, I know. So, you're so bad when I'm around. Anyway, don't say things like that. It's very bad. Because the deal is, their job is to get most dysregulated around you. And oftentimes when you've been away from them or you've been at work all day, you don't have much left in the tank. You're just hopeful that they're going to be kind. Like, just watch your iPad. Be nice for a minute. Yeah? But the problem is, they are to get dysregulated when they're around you, and that's what you want. Okay? So part of what we're going to talk about before we end here tonight is then how do we stay in the game so that we can be present to do that, right? That's part of the deal. Because never in the history of you being able to, they always say you should put yourself first. Well, I don't know who that is. Like the last time I put myself first, I was in grade 7. Right? So it's not about me first, but it certainly has to be about me too. How do we find time so that we are at our best, whatever that looks like, so that we can give these kids the best capacity? And I'll tell you what, it will pay off in the long run. Huh? Because oftentimes people say to me, oh my God, like when do you want me to make time to be nice too? Like seriously. It pays off in the long run. The job is the more regulated your babies are, the more capable they are of making good choices. You understand me? And you don't understand what somebody has on in terms of on board in terms of regulating skills until they're dysregulated. Yeah? You can't tell unless they flip their lid what they have to get regulated again. So for example, if you were driving home tonight and there's a guy in a dually truck, this is very stereotypical, but let's just go with it, leaving the Flames game, yeah, his name is Bart, or something, I don't know. Anyway, he loves his dually truck, yeah? And you rear-end him downtown Calgary because you're checking your phone, okay? He knows it, you know it, everybody knows it, but you have smashed the ever-living love out of his beloved truck. You are gonna hope, against all hope, when he comes out of his truck that he has had somebody in his life to teach him how to regulate emotion, okay? Because if he does, he'll pop out of there and be like, what's going on here? Are you okay? Gosh. If he's dysregulated, what is that gonna look like? He's gonna drag you out of your car and rough you up. I'm just kidding, probably not, but he might. So, but you don't know what somebody has on board unless they get distressed, which is sometimes, in our classrooms, we see the honeymoon period of kids. When your lid is on, you have access to everything you've ever been taught, right? You have access to everything you've ever been taught when your lid is on. What you don't have access to is when your lid is flipped, right? So teaching kids how to regulate emotion when their lid is on is not helpful. Because if you ever said this to your baby, like, okay, honey, when kids are mean, let's practice what you're gonna do. Or when you go out on the playground and kids aren't not gonna make a good choice, what are you gonna do? And they could be like, okay, I'm gonna take 3 deep breaths, I'm gonna find a teacher, and I'm gonna journal. You're like, wow, babe, you are amazing. And then what happens 37 seconds later when they go out onto the playground or their brother tells them they're dumb? Bam! And then we haul them back in and we're like, you haven't earned recess. You don't know. They know what to do when they're regulated. They don't know what to do in the process of getting dysregulated. So how do we help a kid do that? You know how to do this. When they're little, you help them regulate again and again and again and again. And that's how they do it. You never outgrow this lid flipping thing. You never do, right?